Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the new Brit workshop. We've finished all of the assembly and the wiring for the new 750mm X-Carve, and now it's time to get it talking to the computer. The X controller has been assembled, and this will be the first opportunity to test everything. Now, throughout all of this, I've been following the Inventable's instructions. I've found a few weaknesses in them in the odd place, but generally speaking, I've managed to get all the way through with no particular problems. So now we're on the computer setup page, and one of the first things that I'll point out to you is that your particular computer, certainly it was the case with mine, needs some drivers in there which will allow it to talk via the USB cable to the X controller. And there is a note in the computer instructions, and it says if you're having trouble connecting your X controller on a computer running Windows, you may need to update the FTDI driver. And if so, click here. And I've gone through that process. And it was very simple. You just have to install this thing. I then rebooted the computer just to be on the safe side. And once that is done, I can turn on the X controller and then plug in the USB cable into the computer. So that's okay so far. And now we're going to go into the little test setup routine. Now, following the instructions, it tells you to go to the easel application. And when you go there, it asks you a number of questions about your machine. I've gone through that bit. And then the important question is, it asks you which COM port the X controller is sitting on. And for me, it's COM port 4. And as soon as you've done that, and it's had its little handshake with the X controller, it then gives you this menu. And what I want you to do now is just note what happens as I tell it to go right and left. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to move in the X direction to the right, and you look the direction it goes in, it moved to the left. If I tell it to move to the left, it goes to the right. And in the Y direction, I want it to come towards the front, so I'm pressing that one, and it's going backwards. Y direction, I want it to go towards the back, it's coming forwards. Now, initially, when I did this, and I actually went through a rehearsal of all of what I'm going through now, and when I did it initially, the Y carriage motors were going in opposite directions, so it was trying to make it twist like that. So I did rewire one of the motors, and I guessed which one to rewire, and I guessed the wrong one. So it means I've got to rewire both of them. So the Y motors, both of them need to be reversed, and the X motor needs to be reversed. And that's what I'm going to show you now. Now, here are the 4 connectors which come from the stepper motors: X, Y1, Y2, and Z. We know Z's okay, so we're not going to touch that. Now, you may notice that on this Y2, the left-hand wire is white, and the next one to it is red. Well, originally it was the other way around. As you can see here, I wired all of these up so they go red, white, green, and black. Red, white, green, black, red, white, green, black, and so on. But then I noticed the problem I had with the Y motion with the twisting, so I just changed these two on the Y2 axis, the red and the white. Those are the ones that dictate the direction. And that was the wrong. I should have changed it on the other. So now what I've got to do is change those back again and change the Y1 pair over as well. So it's the red and the white that we're dealing with. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to switch off, and you heard it logging off on my computer. So I'm going to start with these two here, and effectively I'm putting these two back to where they were before. So that at the moment now is actually where I started from, and that's when I was having this skewing problem. And I now realise it's this pair on the Y-axis that I need to change. It's the red and the white. So that's the red and the white on the Y1 swapped over. And I'm going to swap over the red and white on the X-axis now, and that will get it running in the right direction. So that's now swapped over. So I think I can turn back on again. So we're now back at this test screen in easel, and I'm going to see if I can move the X to the right. Yep, it goes right, goes left. The Y I want it to come towards the front. That's fine, go towards the back. The Z I want it to go down. Yep, I want it to go up. That's fine, so I can say yes, yes, yes to all of those. And then I'm being invited to continue. See that button there, click that button. It says, should easel control your spindle automatically, or would you prefer to turn it on and off manually? I want to turn it on and off manually, and so it's on that, in that preference setting, manual, so save that. Does your machine have limit switches? Yes. And it's now saying start the homing sequence. Now this is where, because it's for the very first time, if anything starts to look wrong, or the machine tries to go beyond the limit of where it can go, you need to be ready to press that button very quickly. In the old days, it used to be just turn the power off very quickly, but not anymore. So here's the homing sequence. So that was the Z direction, that's just worked. So it's now asking if I've got a Z probe, and the answer is yes. It says plug the leads into the carriage, that onto the collet. So I plugged it in, the clip is attached, and I'm going to now, there's contact. It says advanced settings, I don't know what that is. Select units, millimeters. Touch plate thickness, it's 15 millimeters, it says 14.99, I'll leave it at that. Probe rate, it says 127 millimeters per minute, that's a default. I think I'd like to have that just a little bit slower, to be honest. So in 1 second, I wouldn't want it to go more than the millimeter. So I'll put 60 millimeters in a minute, and the retract height, that is, after it's touched the sensor plate, how far does it then go back up again? And I would think that it says 6.35, that's a quarter of an inch. I'll leave it at that. Maximum probing distance. What's the maximum depth it would go downwards until it decides to give up? And I'll leave it at the default. Test your probe sequence. And again, I'm just looking very carefully in case I have to hit the stop switch very quickly. And there we go, that worked perfectly. So I'm going back to continue here. It says, hooray, you've finished setting up your machine. Well, it's now saying, would I like to run a test carve? Actually, I don't really want to do it at this stage because I want to move the machine to a better position to do it. However, I'm going to do a test carve without the motor running, and I'm going to make the machine think that it's touching the surface of some material, but in fact it'll be much too high, therefore it's not going to actually hit anything, but I just want to see whether it all moves around nicely. Let's have a look. And first thing it wants to do is home the machine. Okay, it wants to know the material thickness, 1 inch. Yep, everything's held down. Cutter, I'm pretending, is a 60-degree cutter. Please choose one of the following 0 methods. I'm going to do it manual this time. There's a pretend 0 position as though I had a cutter in there. I'm going to confirm the home position. Raise the bit. I don't have the dust tube fitted yet, but I've told the machine I've got one, so I've said it's attached. The spindle is on, now I'm going to carve. Well, you can see that it's going through the motions, and I just wanted to let it do that rather than doing it with a live piece of wood. It's now just coming to the end. There is a progress thing on the screen to say it's nearly at the end. And then it returns to the home position for the job at the end of it. And it says, did it turn out okay? I'll say yes, it looks great. We've tested the machine with easel. In fact, it was with easel that we set it up for the first time, and that went fairly smoothly. Now I'm going to the universal G-code sender to see whether that interacts with the machine as I'd expect. I've started the program, and the first thing it's asking me for is a COM port, and I know it's COM4. I'm going to open the COM port, and the first command is always $H. So that's homed okay with no problem at all, and I'm going to make sure I can control the machine. I'm going to do the Z downwards. That works quite well. Now what I've done is I've gone into X-Carve Pro and I've created a very, very simple toolpath called Test 1, and it's in G-code. And I'm now going to run that toolpath. So back to Universal G-code sender, file mode, browse. I'm looking for test. I've told the machine that its current position is the home position for the job. Let's see what happens. I'm ready for this again. Well, there we go. That seems to be pretty nifty, pretty fast too. So it looks as though I can get X-Carve Pro working, Universal G-code senders working, and so on. That really is the setup and testing of the electronic side. It was pretty easy, really, and the only difficulty I had was the polarity of those stepper motor wires, and remember it was the red and white that we swapped over to get that right. Anyway, we took it in our stride, and the whole idea of taking a machine like the X-Carve is that you're learning, and you'll learn a lot about CNC work, you'll learn a lot about stepper motors and all that sort of thing with a machine like this. So those are all the tests I intend to do at the moment. I've got one or two other things. I want to put some sockets on this board for power, so I don't have to have lots of things plugged in. And I also want to move the machine into the enclosure that I had for the old X-Carve. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.